Hello, BookTube, and welcome back to a series of videos in which I am reading you a book. We are reading the Gospel according to St. Luke. We are still in early days in Luke, but Jesus has made his debut in public. He's begun doing miracle working, and we are now up to chapter 6 in the King James translation. And it came to pass on the second Sabbath after the first that he went through the cornfields, and his disciples plucked the ears of corn and did eat, rubbing them in their hands. And certain of the Pharisees said unto him, Why do ye that which is not lawful to do on the Sabbath days? And Jesus answering them said, Have ye not read so much as this, what David did when he himself hungered, and they were with him, how he went into the house of God, and did take and eat the showbread, and give also to them that were with him, which it is not lawful to eat, but for the priests alone? And he said unto them, The Son of Man is Lord also of the Sabbath. And it came to pass also on another Sabbath that he entered into the synagogue and taught, and there was a man whose right hand was withered. And the scribes and Pharisees watched him, whether he would heal on the Sabbath day, that they might find an accusation against him. But he knew their thoughts, and said to the man which had the withered hand, Rise up, and stand forth in the midst. And he arose and stood forth. Then Jesus said unto them, I will ask you one thing. Is it lawful on the Sabbath day to do good, or to do evil? To save life, or to destroy it? And looking round upon them all, he said unto the man, Stretch forth thy hand. And he did so, and his hand was restored, whole as the other. And they were filled with madness, and communed with one another what they might do to Jesus. So his miracle is not changing their hearts. It's changing the hearts of a lot of people, but not them. They seem hardened, immune to whatever effect he's having on, for instance, the grown men who dropped their lives in an instant to become his disciples. Why these men aren't affected that way, I don't think is ever made clear. And it came to pass in those days that he went out into a mountain to pray, and continued all night in prayer. And when it was a day, he called unto himself his disciples, and of them he chose 12, whom also he named apostles: Simon, who was also named Peter, Andrew his brother, James and John, Philip and Bartholomew, Matthew and Thomas, James the son of Alphaeus, Simon called Zelotes, and Judas the brother of James, and Judas Iscariot, which was also the traitor. And he came down with them, and stood in the plain, and the company of his disciples, and of a great multitude of people out of all Judea and Jerusalem, and from the seacoast of Tyre and Sidon, which came to hear him, and to be healed of their diseases. And they that were vexed with unclean spirits, and they were healed. And the whole multitude sought to touch him, for there went virtue out of him, and healed them all. This is a familiar scene that we're seeing. Jesus surrounded by crowds who are coming there mainly because they've learned that he can heal them. Not necessarily for his teachings, of which we've heard precious little, although that's about to change. And he lifted up his eyes on his disciples, and he said, Blessed be ye poor, for yours is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are ye that hunger now, for ye shall be filled. Blessed are ye that weep now, for ye shall laugh. Blessed are ye when men shall hate you, and when they shall separate you from their company, and shall reproach you, and cast out your name as evil, for the Son of Man's sake. Rejoice ye in that day, and leap for joy, for behold, your reward is great in heaven. For in the like manner did their fathers unto the prophets. But woe unto you that are rich, for ye have received your consolation. Woe unto ye that are full, for ye shall hunger. Woe unto you that laugh now, for ye shall mourn and weep. Woe unto you when all men shall speak well of you, so did their fathers to the false prophets. But I say unto you which hear, love your enemies, do good to them which hate you, bless them that curse you, and pray for them which despitefully use you. And unto him that smiteth thee on the one cheek, offer also the other, and him that taketh away thy cloak, forbid not thy coat as also. Give to every man that asketh of thee, and him that taketh away thy goods, ask them not back. And as ye would that men should do to you, do ye also to them likewise. For if ye love them which love you, what thanks have ye? For sinners also love those that love them. And if ye do good to them which do good to you, what thanks have ye? For sinners also even do the same. And if ye lend to them of whom ye hope to receive, what thanks have ye? For sinners also lend to sinners, and receive as much again. But love ye your enemies, and do good, and lend, hoping for nothing again. And your reward will be great, and you shall be children of the highest. For he is kind unto the unthankful and to the evil. But be ye therefore merciful, as your Father is also merciful. Judge not, and ye shall not be judged. Condemn not, and ye shall not be condemned. Forgive, and ye shall be forgiven. Give, and it shall be given unto you. Good measure, pressed down, and shaken together, and running over, shall men give unto your bosom. For with the same measure with you meet withal, it will be measured unto you again. Somehow, the crowd, which is almost entirely Jews, manages not to break into laughter when Jesus said that God is merciful even to people he doesn't like. He must be reading a different Old Testament than I've read. And he spake a parable unto them. Can the blind lead the blind? Shall they not both fall into the ditch? And the disciple is not above his master, but every one that is perfect shall be as his master. And why beholdest thou the mote in thy brother's eye, but perceivest not the beam that is in thy own eye? Either how canst thou say to thy brother, Brother, let me pull the mote that is in thy eye, when thou thyself beholdest not the beam that is in thy own eye? Thou hypocrite, cast out first the beam in thy own eye, and then thou shalt see clearly to pull out the mote that is in thy brother's eye. For a good tree bringeth not forth corrupt fruit, neither doth a corrupt tree bring forth good fruit. For every tree is known by his own fruit. For of thorns men do not gather figs, nor of bramble bush gather they grapes. A good man out of the good treasure of his heart bringeth forth that which is good, and an evil man out of the evil treasure of his heart bringeth forth that which is evil. For of the abundance of the heart his mouth speaketh. And why call me Lord, Lord, and do not the things which I say? Whosoever cometh to me, and heareth my sayings, and doeth them, I will show you whom he is like. He is like a man which built a house, and dug deep, and laid the foundations on a rock. When the flood arose, and the stream beat vehemently upon the house, it could not shake it, for it was founded upon a rock. But he that heareth and doeth not is like a man that without a foundation built a house upon the earth, against which the stream did beat vehemently, and immediately it fell, and the ruin of that house was great. So, finally, we get doctrine. We get chaos as well. There's been an enormous amount of noise and jostling from my dog right at this moment. She has been as silent and still as a stone statue outside a public building for the last 10 hours. But now? No. But we now get doctrine, and I might want to point out here that it's not a doctrine that many famous Christians actually follow. And this has been a familiar complaint for centuries. The church, any public gathering, any group of any kind, will be full of posers and fakes and big, fat parasites. Look at the big mega preachers, the Christian mega preachers, who are a blight on the Christian society of this country. They are multi-billionaires. They have never given anything of their own. They have institutions maybe, or charitable foundations that they can do tax write-offs on, but they have never given anything of their own to anyone, ever. They do not put themselves last. If you even so much as look at them wrong, they will spend their life maniacally trying to persecute you. They do not turn the other cheek at all. They do not love those who persecute them. They become enraged at the slightest brook of their authority. Think of those mega preachers. I know those of you Christians out there doing me the honor of listening to this series of videos will already know these people and think of them with a great deal of embarrassment, if not worse emotions, a great deal of embarrassment. And I sympathize with that completely, because it's an irony that the people who are the foremost audience getters in the public-facing Christian world are indisputably the worst Christians. Just indisputably. The go-to example here is Kenneth Copeland, who maybe some of you don't know. Those who aren't big on the religious scene won't know him. He's extremely wealthy, a multi-billionaire. As corrupt and fraudulent and stupid as the day is long. Just an open scandal on the church. Plain and simple. Just an open scandal on the faith, on Christianity. Thinks of himself not only as the world's greatest Christian, that goes without saying, but also as pretty much the equal of God. In fact, I would argue that, like many mega preachers, he views God as a kind of regional sub-manager in his corporation. Mr. Yahweh, he does good work for us. I'm not saying I'm going to can him at all. I want him to keep his nose clean, but he does good work for me. If I go into my office and I want to clear off my books and just have a one-on-one meeting, I think you plebs call it prayer. I know he'll take my call. If we take Kenneth Copeland as an example, granted he's an egregious example, but I bet in your own, if you are a Christian, I bet in your own congregation you have people who would not dream of following doctrine that has, in this book, in this chapter of Luke, comes straight from the lips of their Messiah. They wouldn't dream of following it. Kenneth Copeland would be a perfect example of that. If you walked up to him, first of all, you couldn't get past his security cordon. But if you were to get past him, you didn't know him at all, and you said, I don't even know. I'm cold. I'm chilly. Will you give me the coat off your back? Not only would he not do it, but he'd turn away while his security detail beat you and threw you into the street. If he went on to some TV program, and he always brings this ostentatious Bible of his with tab markings all through it. If one of the hosts of that show were to say, well, you know, I've been a reluctant or even an agnostic Christian for quite some time, but listening to you talk here in this hour has really made me reconsider. I feel a faith rekindling inside me. And I'm wondering, would you give me that Bible? Kenneth Copeland would refuse. Absolutely refuse. The thought would never even cross his mind to obey the strictures of his Lord. And he's the most egregious example. There are plenty of others, though. This is one of the things that, the flip side of something that we have seen in this reading of the Gospels so far. I've mentioned a few times that when Jesus makes sayings, just parables of one kind or another, brothers forgiving brothers, fathers forgiving sons, that sort of thing, that's one thing. But when Jesus makes supernatural predictions, supernatural claims, that's a different thing, because those claims are always false. And what do you do about that? What do you do when a figure who's calling himself God's anointed is saying things that just aren't true, that were known not to be true even in his own day? The world in his own day was known to be round. The world in his own day was known to have smaller seeds than the mustard seed, etc., etc. But also everything after that, the predictions that he makes after that in a few Gospels, which is that, among other things, there are people listening to me now who will be alive when the end of the world comes. That obviously isn't true. So we on the one hand, in these Gospels, we've looked at things like that and thought about the trouble that gives, right? Not only in terms of the internal consistency of these Gospels, where this is supposed to be a divine being saying these things. How can that be if the things the divine being is saying is wrong? But also in terms of you, if you're a believing Christian, what do you do when you look at this text? When you know, these are the founding documents of your faith, but these are not your faith. Your faith is something else. It's still not an easy walk when you're encountering something said by Jesus himself that isn't true. You immediately have to start interpreting it, and that's what Christians have been doing for 2,000 years. You immediately have to start interpreting those things. But the flip side of that, granted, it's I think very interesting, especially if it's broached in the way that we're broaching it here, where it's not meant as a challenge or a criticism of any kind. I'm not trying to get you to change anything. I'm just pointing out these things are here, and this is what your church is based on. You had better know they're there, and you had better do some thinking about it. I myself don't believe that it will dent your faith at all. As I've always said, the scriptures are not the source of your faith. They're a door that you open to get to the source of your faith, which is the Christians who have described it to me, a pure, bright, winding light, something that mere words on paper don't even enter into the equation. But if we're going to talk about the awkwardness of when Jesus gets things wrong, well, then we also have to talk about the awkwardness of when he gets things right. There is nothing much more right than the things that we've heard in this chapter. The things that we've heard in this chapter are not only ethically, morally right, they're supernaturally so. Superhumanly so. Humans don't think this way. They should. And the world would change for the better if they did, but they don't. If we're going to say sometimes Jesus' veracity falls short of his divine pedigree, then on the other hand, we have to be equally honest in saying that sometimes Christians fall short. Many times Christians fall short of what he himself is calling them to do. And in this chapter, he gives those Christians no wiggle room. None at all. This is what you should do. And don't expect that I will consider you the fruit of my tree if you don't do that. He doesn't leave it in doubt what he thinks if you don't act the way he asks. It's that he will consider, you can say, Lord, Lord, all you want, but you are not representative fruit of this tree. I always think, I mean, there have been endless layers of Sunday school lessons and homilies and all sorts of exegesis that have piled and piled and piled and piled on top of these words. When you strip all that away and get back to these words, that's when you'll know. That's when you'll know whether or not you're dealing with an actual Christian. Is that they will live this passage. They'll live this chapter. I've known plenty of them that do. It's not always easy for them. But anyway, so I've strayed into Sunday school. I don't want to do that. So we'll wrap this up for now. This was just speaking. There was a little bit of healing going on, but just speaking. Very little else. The healing was mainly meant to show that the scribes and Pharisees that we saw last time are now dedicated to working Jesus harm for reasons that I do not understand. Except that maybe his healing of a man's hand makes them look bad. I don't know. I don't think that the law that the Pharisees are championing has much to say about people supernaturally healing people on the Sabbath. I'm not sure that falls squarely under the heading of do no work. But one way or another, the hint that we had last chapter that those human figures are not being persuaded, they are not having their hearts open, they are not being converted, and they're starting to get angry. The hint that we had last chapter is now codified. We have now been told, as we were told in the last two Gospels, that they now want to seek him harm. They want to do some harm to him. So there's now a human drama unfolding here, and we'll see where that takes us in the next chapter. So I'll wrap this up for now, and I'll see you then. Thank you, BookTube.